What's going on, guys? It's your boy Anthony alongside the best Big 3 account in the universe, Big 3 News, aka Will, back with another edition of the Fourth Man. We just wrapped up one of the busiest weekends. The busiest week or weekend of the Big 3 in its history, and it was an awesome weekend. A lot of changes in the standings, a lot of upsets, more specifically on Saturday. And it's a wild week, so we're going to recap all the games and get into it kind of in a different style, just because there were so many games that went on. We want to make sure that you get the most of the information during this hour or so. But first and foremost, my guy, Will, I know it was hectic on my side, but for your side, I mean, it seems like a busy week every time I talk to you.
This week was crazy, and credit to everybody who did it. Like everyone was working their asses off this weekend. So credit to everybody who got it done. And at the end of the day, we had 12 games in 3 days.
Wild.
So credit to everybody who was involved with that. Everybody did a great job, and we keep on moving forward, man. This is it. Look at the standings. This is it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's do or die time. It's not up or shut up.
We're at the point where not only are teams actually eliminated, but we could probably ourselves dissect some of these teams and probably eliminate them, at least toward the bottom half of the stand. We can probably eliminate them ourselves because there's only 2 games left in the season. So we're going to get into every team. We're going to kind of give you the theme of what we think of them as a team and also how they performed this weekend, give you updates on that. So before we dive into that, as always, if you want to find our socials, follow all Big 3 News, whether it's game days or throughout the week. We'll be doing this all season up to the championship in September at Fourth Man Pod, at Big 3 News, at @A_Siggy. If you want to watch the show on YouTube, it's youtube.com/fourthmanpod. We've been having a bunch of interviews. We've been recapping the show every week, not with necessarily visuals, but it's a more detailed recap and probably the most detailed one you'll get on YouTube.
Oh, absolutely.
For everyone who tunes in on Dash Radio and the Nothing But Net channel, we appreciate you guys as always listening on Saturdays. I know sometimes it can be a little late of a recap, but at the same time, if you're not tuning in or you're a little bit more casual, you're at least catching up to speed while the games are going on. So
definitely,
we'll make sure you're informed week in and week out. So let's dive into this. Every team played 2 games. We saw triplets get upset. We saw game-winning 4-point shots more than once from more like the same person and Andre Owens. It was a wild
circle
weekend.
Too. Same shot, really, twice.
I mean, really an off-balance 4-pointer. I mean, I want to start here. What kind of surprised you the most out of the weekend, and which team do you think did themselves the biggest favor?
I think the biggest surprise was probably, I think it's, cliche to say, but I think it's, triplets losing. And, as much as I don't want to, when I say that's a surprise, I'm like, oh, I'm surprised they lost. It's almost insulting to Killer 3s, but
yeah, we're clipping this.
Yeah, exactly. But in a way, when a team is playing that good and every week just seems like, they're almost like getting better and better every week. And, they just seem absolutely dominant and unstoppable. And this hype train just sort of, surrounds them when it just comes to a halt and they lose in the way that they did. I mean, that wasn't like the power game where, if Trilogy had 2 losses on the season right now, they were 4-2. And that one loss, the closest they ever came to losing was, Royce White has a shot to sink triplets, and it misses. And whatever, it was a good shot, but it missed. And then Joe Johnson hits that, fadeaway game-winning 3. But that wasn't this type of loss for triplets. Killer 3s came in and they took care of business from the jump. I mean, Joe Johnson looked off. He wasn't really getting any help from anywhere else. I think Alan Anderson played a pretty solid game individually. But other than that, I think Killer 3s might have given us the blueprint a little bit because they just completely, triplets looked sloppy. They looked like they were panicking a little bit. And, I said this on game day, but somewhere I think Kenyon Martin and that trilogy team for 2017 are popping bottles somewhere.
Ooh,
but
had to be,
this was probably, this triplets team is probably one of the best teams that we've seen in the history of the Big 3. I mean, it has to be. They're 5-1, 2 games left to go. They've really dominated every opponent except for Power. and now they lose. So this is, in my opinion, the biggest upset in Big 3 history.
Yeah, I agree. Which team do you feel like, let me rephrase that. Which team do you feel like did themselves the biggest favor over the 2 games in 3 days?
I would say I think it's keeping on the same path. I would say you have to say Killer Threes, because this was a team that this time last week was 500.
That's a good point.
And a 500 team was nowhere near sniffing the playoffs. And then you look at this weekend and they had, so now I'm thinking so much about the game Saturday, but remind me, who did they play Thursday?
Killer Threes, that's when they played Bivouac.
Okay, Bivouac.
And went off against
So
them,
there you go. So Bivouacs, you have Bivouac, and then you have triplets. So I think both of you were looking at that and like they're going to go 1-1, and they're just going to stay a 500 team. But triplets was a must-win game for them. And that's pretty unfair. Your second game in 3 days against the undefeated champions, and you really have to win this game to stay alive. And not only did they win, they made a huge statement.
Yeah, you right literally go from worst to first.
That's literally wild. And just I feel like their 2 wins were the most impactful. The only other team that I think went 2-0 was Aliens, right? Or
yeah, no. Aliens.
Yeah, Aliens. That's it. Everybody else went 1-1.
I believe you're right.
Besides Bivouac, they went 0-2, and Enemies went 0-2.
Okay, yeah, well, I was thinking 3-headed monsters, but they actually lost the triplets. So
because they're all 4-2.
Yeah,
and I feel like they were all going into the weekend 3-1.
Yeah, and I gotta say too, the fact that they kept both teams under 40, like we expect Bivouac, unfortunately, but triplets, man, they couldn't even put up 40 points.
I know.
I think a lot of it has to do with, Mo Charlo's made a big difference defensively, but throwing guys like Mo Charlo and a healthy Dante Green on Joe Johnson, just more size, but just a different look. Bigger guards, 6'11" guard essentially is what Dante is almost. That I feel like, maybe that is the blueprint. That's something maybe we didn't see enough in the championship because Steven Jackson trying to take the reins a little bit defensively.
And we talk about this team, this game, because really that was the game of the weekend, right? Like,
yeah,
who are we kidding? But Dante, so let's talk about that other game. Dante Green, 33 points.
Yeah.
He has just ascended to another level this second half.
MVP level at this point.
Absolutely. Dante Green has to be in your MVP conversation. He had a solid first half of the season, very solid. But again, when you start out 0-2, you get dismissed a little bit. Now they have doubled their loss total as wins, which is a very complicated way to say they're 4-2. And he is absolutely an MVP candidate. He's playing like he's a top 3 player in this league right now. The only other players that I put above him at this moment is maybe, it's recency bias. But I think personally, he's playing better than Barbosa at the moment.
That's tough.
And I think, so the only 2 guys I'd put above him is, he's maybe neck and neck with Mike Taylor and Joe Johnson.
I think Mike Taylor might have lost. Do we think Mike Taylor lost his step, not playing one of the games? I know he got injured.
Well, I never want to blame it to an injury,
Fair. But even in that other game, it was more of a team effort, like individually, do we feel like maybe he lost a little bit in the race for MVP? He talks about it being both sides of the ball. So
it's just because I feel like he didn't play. So it's absolutely recency bias. He comes out, he has another stellar performance. We're going to, this conversation is going to be kaputs, but he goes out in Milwaukee, exactly what you said. I feel like, it maybe was unfair to expect him to have this crazy game because they were in Milwaukee. It was Mike Taylor game or whatever, but they got the win. He did what they had to do to win, and he played a solid game. And then he gets hurt, so he doesn't play the next week. But, I don't know. I just think I agree with you with both sides of the ball, but I just feel like Dante Green dropping 33 and then upsetting triplets, what really is going to end up being the game of the week, a game of the year.
Yeah.
For that is going to be triplets and ghost ballers. Because if Mike Taylor goes out there and he adds to his resume, we beat Joe Johnson at triplets. And then he not only does that, but then he knocks triplets down to everybody else's level. And then it's just complete mayhem for the last week of the season. And then if Dante Green then, doesn't then drop 33, then I don't know. But if Joe Johnson is the MVP, then maybe the much more interesting conversation we should be having is who's number 2. Because Dante Green has very sneakily snuck up, and then he's just like, boom, in your face these last two games. Well, meanwhile, Mike Taylor's getting a little bit more. There's like buzz because it's sort of like an underdog story. And but you're right, he has been playing both sides of the ball, but so is Dante. And Dante will guard all three positions.
That's true.
So I really think that question is going to come down to how does Mike Taylor do against triplets? Because we've seen Dante Green's things, and that's the most impressive thing that anybody's done this season.
Well, I think it's
besides maybe Joe Johnson beating the scoring record.
Well, true, but I think it's going to be one of those things now at this point where we thought the MVP race was a runaway, and now it's kind of maybe we'll have to wait, play the long game a little bit. We'll have to actually ride this thing out the whole season because
it's not over.
It's not over. That's exactly what I'm getting at. And I was making this, antic earlier. This is how close Dante was to setting the scoring record. It literally rimmed out. It went around the rim and out.
I know.
And I got to be real. Dante's our guy. I was a little upset with you, CJ, that you took the three, but hey.
I was upset too. I was like, CJ, you got to pass that back to him. But to his credit, I don't know if you saw my Instagram live with him today. They didn't know.
I know. Well, I actually talked with Dante too, and he told me, because right after the game, he said, I should have just went and laid it up. But I took the three because I think it was just more of a heat check at that point,
Yeah.
But yeah, I did see the IG live today, and I didn't realize that he
said he was like, we don't have the scores up. We don't know until the end of the game.
Yeah, I guess they're not really looking up,
Yeah. Well, he said in the scoreboard they don't have the individual stats.
Oh, okay.
Like an NBA game, if you go to NBA game, shows it.
Right.
He said they don't have that. So he said, I had no idea.
He just knew he was going off.
He just knew he was going off.
Going crazy. Okay, let's get into these teams. I feel like I was going to start bottom to top, but at this point, we've talked so much about triplets and killer threes, so maybe we can
scratch those two off the list.
We can scratch those two off the list.
Yeah.
I mean, triplets goes 1-1 on the weekend. They beat three-headed monsters. I think, and the final there was, let me give a final here, 51-45. Three-headed monsters made it close, but ultimately a big halftime lead prevailed them to victory. And then Killer Threes, like we said, went 2-0. Dante Green dropped 33 points. Frank Nitty had an awesome game too against triplets. One thing he said when he came on this show, well, when I was asking about the championship game, is that he's like, I only played 2 minutes in championship game, so don't even ask me about it. It's like I wasn't even there. So to kind of get that opportunity again to go against the best team and then put up that kind of performance, I think he had 15 points and 7 assists, which 7 assists in my book in the Big Three is a huge accomplishment to the fact that they only go to 50. But to get that second opportunity and ball out, that's pretty sick too. So yeah.
Well, it's funny too, and we're talking about Killer Threes, and this is gonna become the Killer Threes episode. I can already tell, but Frank Nitty, it's funny, right? Because in 2019, obviously Frank Nitty's very good, right? So let me preference this by saying that, what I mean, as the 5'10" guy who went 1-9 in his rec season.
Don't bring that up to everybody.
As critique Frank Nitty, but I remember in 2019, you could tell Frank Nitty's good. He's a Drew League legend, but he didn't necessarily do it for me immediately in 2019. He was good. I think he was one of the assist leaders in the league.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we went into the season and we were I don't know who's replacing Steven Jackson. And to be honest with you, I think I said, I was has to be Dante Green, because I don't think it's gonna be Frank Nitty.
You did. You made that point.
But I couldn't be more wrong. And we talk about guys who they come in their second year and they put it up to another level. But this might be one of the biggest jumps, because exactly what you said. This guy that played 2 minutes in the championship game, and to be honest with you, he played 2 minutes in the championship game for a reason.
Right.
It wasn't some crazy conspiracy to keep him out. They had their best guys out there.
Exactly. Yeah.
But now
the trust factor isn't there yet.
And you understood why they made him captain. You know what I mean? He's very well respected, and he's a young guy, and he's very passionate about the Big Three. He wants to grow the league. So absolutely, those are the guys that I want to have as captains. Just like DeMar and Scal. I mean, guys who are I'm in this thing for the long haul. But he has stepped up as one of the better player captains in this league. So, who knows? They could end up going 0-2, and then they end 4-4, and we're like, yeah, they was an okay team. So we're riding high on them right now. But I did just want to. I'll be the first one to admit when I was wrong.
I think we were kind of right. I mean, I was
wrong on Frank Nitty. I was wrong on Frank Nitty.
Oh, well, fair.
What I'm saying.
but we were right on them as a team. We looked bad to start the season, but
Yeah.
a 4-game winning streak for Killer Threes. Very impressive stuff. And unfortunately for Killer Threes, they're not the only 4-2 team. There is a ton of teams that are 4-2. We got Trilogy, we got Tri-State, we got Ghost Ballers, we got Three-Headed Monsters, and only 4 teams can take a plane, a first-class seat to the Bahamas. So let's talk about some of these 4-2 teams. Let's start with Trilogy because they had an interesting weekend. They went 1-1. They lost to Ball Hogs, but then they demolished Ghost Ballers. The game against Ball Hogs, they don't have their captain in Jared Jack. Congrats to him, by the way, on getting the coaching job with the Phoenix Suns.
Yes, that's awesome.
On the flip side, they go against Ghost Ballers, like I said, demolish them, but they don't have their best player in Mike Taylor. At the same time, though, Trilogy does look like a really, really, like we talked about how we thought they were the second best team. You didn't see that much of that without Jared Jack, but when they have Jared Jack in the lineup, they look incredible. I mean, the fact that they can go to Jack and Briscoe and alternate in between them, I think is a weapon of its own. But, James White is always a guy that's very credible. Amir Johnson, I feel like gets better week in and week out.
Yeah, he's
guy
really finding his footing.
I think so too. The 5th guy's been interchangeable because they just lost Quintel Woods, unfortunately. And after speaking with him, he thinks he's kind of done for the year. So that's unfortunate. They did add Devin Sweetney, who pretty cool. We actually now have 3 guys from the tryouts, and
that's
Devin
cool.
Sweetney, Corey Jefferson, and Tony Criswell, who made his debut as well. But we didn't get a chance to see him play. So maybe figuring out the back end of the rotation. But like, what would you like in one word? How would you even describe Trilogy up to this point?
I mean, I think they're the deepest team in the league. Even without seeing Sweetney yet, I don't know if you can point to me to another bench that has one guy. And unfortunately, I'm sort of saying this statement because of Quintel Woods, but up to this point, they've had really 2 guys that could start for other teams.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's another team out there that you can say that about.
That's a really good point.
I think about it, and killer threes, CJ Watson maybe, but Tri-State, you have Earl Clark, but other than that, I just feel like Briscoe and Woods are starting on the majority of teams.
Yeah,
and like you said, they miss Jarrett Jack. They don't have this person for this game, and they just keep going. Steven Jackson had the best offseason.
Yeah.
Steven Jackson constructed that team from the ground up.
They had Meta.
I mean, maybe, I don't know what type of shape Meta was in. If you're having Meta replace Quintel Woods, then sure. But Quintel Woods, credit to him, no disrespect, played great.
Yeah, he did.
And I don't want to immediately, just because he's Meta world peace, say, oh, it would have been such a big upgrade.
No, I think it's recency bias in the sense that I just watched Jermaine O'Neal's, I guess, documentary that he put together.
How was that?
Malice at the Palace. Pretty good. I feel like we were a little bit younger when that happened back in 2004. So it was hard to grasp everything that was going on. I was 6. And it was a different world. I was 7. So a little bit of a hard understanding. You remember seeing it on SportsCenter as a kid, but it was good. You get a little bit more insight on what they were kind of going through at that time and the consequences they faced. But anyways, maybe that's why I'm thinking about that from Trilogy standpoint. But I mean, you're 100% right. They have a ton of guys who could be starting on different teams, who could make valuable impacts on other teams. And to the fact that, I think Isaiah Briscoe is one of the most dynamic people to bring off the bench. We talked about him as maybe a 4th man of the year kind of guy.
Yeah.
But we saw what he did in the starting role. He put up 22 points. Unfortunately, it was in a loss, but, they also lost Quintel Woods in that game. Maybe things are different if they have four people to go to, and Ball Hogs is a good team this year. That's weird to say. But, I think for me, I look at Trilogy and I still think they might be the second best team in this league. I mean, they are second in the standings.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
I just think they might be the second best team. So overall, a solid weekend for Trilogy. You didn't separate yourself necessarily, but
neither did anybody else. So
neither did anybody else. You sit in second place. And also they have the highest point differential in the league at +40. So
yeah.
Feel pretty good about what they've done so far. And he beat a good Ghost Ballers team, despite the circumstances. Moving on to Tri-State, they also went 1-1 on the weekend. They probably had the strongest weekend, I would say, outside in terms of teams that went 1-1, because they lost by 3 to Power. but then they won by 3 against Ball Hogs, both in crunch time. We saw Jason Richardson return. He looked solid in his return. Nate Robinson, I think, it continues to look better and better as the season goes on. It was a little bit of a struggle. Earl Clark, he's looking more and more like the number 2 pick. So you're seeing a little bit of continuity. You're seeing some guys that are I guess getting adjusted or have a little bit more chemistry with each other. They just look more like a team. The small ball seems to work for them. I love the ball movement they have. That's something that Rick Barry preaches for Ball Hogs, but Tri-State does a really good job of it, even as a smaller lineup and been without Larry Sanders. I mean, what do we think of Tri-State? I know that we kind of had the middle of the pack coming into the season. What do we think of them right now at 4-2?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's really just playing up to, playing above expectations. Jason Richardson has been playing great, but it was the Jason Richardson show. But now maybe his absence was sort of a kind of a blessing in disguise, because it forced everybody else to be like, all right, we got to do this.
Yeah.
And credit to them, they have. And so now if you can get Jason Richardson back at the level that he was with Earl Clark, with the way Nate Robinson's playing, hopefully get Larry Sanders back sooner rather than later. The way Tony Roten's been playing, I think.
Yeah, right.
I think this is Tri-State's a damn good team.
Yeah.
And you look at these teams, you look at how many 4-2 teams there are. We're going to end up with 2 teams who were pretty good, who were probably playoff level teams in 2019 who aren't going to make it. That's just a sad fact.
Yeah.
For me, I think Tri-State, depending on, we don't know the schedule. Actually, that's not true. Dante said to them on G Live, I think they're playing Tri-State next week.
Okay. So that's somewhere else that I can't remember who I saw.
I don't know if that's true though. What I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he said that, but I'm sure I'll take that for what it's worth. But so that's a huge game to me. I think I have Killer 3s in a slight edge, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm still think that if you look at the other 4-2 teams, I think Tri-State has a chance, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think they are going to have to go out there, and you're going to have to go 2-0, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. So Larry Sanders did say that his goal was to return by week 7. He was dealing with rib and wrist injury on his Instagram. So he's kind of working his way back, but they could definitely use the size. But I mean, in the game against Ball Hogs, we saw Earl Clark put up 20, Jason Richardson put up 18, and Nate Robinson put up 12. And in the game against Power, I mean, I feel like that was a strong game, even though they were down late. They really made a kind of a run for their money late in the game. Saw Jay Rich with 18, and then Nate Robinson 10, Tony Roten 10, Earl Clark 9. So they're really getting scoring contributions from everybody, and they're having multiple, 3 or 4 double-digit scores, it seems like, game in and game out, which is why we kind of thought Ghost Ballers was so dangerous, up to this point. So
I'm going to bring them up again. Does this team kind of remind you of that Killer 3s team, but replace Steven Jackson with Jason Richardson?
Ooh, that's a great comparison.
Right?
Yes, 100%. Guys you can rely on, contributions from different people throughout the rotation. Yeah,
that's
definitely
what this team is seeing. This is what it looks like it's forming into. Jason Richardson is the guy. We
didn't necessarily have a ton of hope for them coming into the year. We thought they were a solid team, but they've exceeded expectations. Okay, I like that comparison. That is spot on. So Tri-State, they sit at 4-2 plus 23 differential. They are 4th in the standings at the moment. So currently, if the Bahamas or the playoffs were to start today, it'd be triplets, trilogy, Killer 3s, and Tri-State.
All the T's.
And all the teams that have some kind of 3 pun in it, as a team name, which is pretty.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're gonna get that. You know what I mean? There's unfortunately.
Well, I mean,
when you have
power
enemies,
in there,
Bivouac, and aliens at the bottom.
Well, that's fair too, but we have power in there, and they're not really one. And Ball Hogs is fighting for a spot. Okay, so my point has been made.
All right, correct. You're correct.
And the fifth, that would mean though that 4-2 teams are not would not be going to the playoffs despite having the same record. Ghost Ballers being the first one, and it was a rough weekend. Not because they went 1-1, because they lost their best player due to injury after their game in Milwaukee. It was late in the game after they had. I think it was the first game when they played Three's Company. Mike Taylor hurt his groin driving to the basket on a layup attempt. They won that game 50-38. They added Alex Scales and Corsley Edwards, which, by the way, Alex Scales looks like he could be fighting for pickup, like the best midseason pickup after the 2 games he played.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, those are 2 great pickups. You know,
Yeah.
like if I was running a big 3 team, those are the 2 guys that I call for injury replacements in the middle of the season. Like,
exactly.
those might be exactly the 2 people that I call. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they both look like they just fit in nicely. It was a seamless transition for him. 2 good spellers.
And
Unfortunately,
again, more big 3 vets, all like big 3 guys.
we
You know
talk
what I mean?
about the veteran experience, how well you can use it to your advantage.
I want ghost bowlers in the Bahamas. I'm gonna put it out there.
Yeah,
I
a
really
little bit
do.
of not a lot of objectivity there. It's a little bit of bias to ghost ballers, huh?
Yes.
That's fair enough. I like
They're my
ghost
sleeper
ballers, too.
team.
They have to be. Can't be Bivouac. Not only because
They've been my
everybody
sleeper
was
team.
on them, but
They've been my sleeper team. Bivouac went to
you could have kept them
mainstream.
as your sleeper team if we look back on it.
They were ghost bowlers were my sleeper team.
No, I'm saying Bivouac could have still been your sleeper team.
Oh yeah,
They haven't woken up. They've yet to wake up. No, but Ghost Ballers, I mean, like, unfortunately for them, they ended up losing 51-34 to Trilogy. I mean, that was just a tough game in general. Not having Mike Taylor.
Your dogs love Mike Taylor. They don't want to hear that.
They love Mike Taylor,
like,
apparently.
"Don't
Yeah,
remind me."
no slander on Ghost Ballers. So 1-1 over the weekend. Mike Taylor probably should be back. I think he's been fighting through a knee injury most of the early part of the season. I mean, what do we think of Ghost Ballers? I mean, obviously you want them to go to the Bahamas, but what are your thoughts on them now as we enter the back half of the season?
On Ghost Ballers, you know, like I just said, you know, that's a team that I want to win. I think it was, you know, I'm not really putting too much into it. It's unfortunate because there is such a limited season, but you don't have your best player, you lose to a good team.
Mm-hmm.
That's, you know, I mean, that's very plain and simple. But you gotta win out. The team that everybody controls their own destiny, in my opinion. You gotta go 2-0.
Yeah, I think it's tough. Yeah, literally every team's gonna have to go 2-0, and I wish we knew the schedule a little bit better because I think we're gonna see a lot of these 4-2 teams fighting for spots, or 4-2
Without a
teams fighting or playing, you know, a 3-3 team or a 4-2 team. So it's gonna be interesting. Three-Headed Monsters is another team that's 4-2. Unfortunately, they're had the lowest plus point differential out of the 4-2 teams, but they're a team that went 1-1. You know, I felt like at times in the triplets game, they gave them a little bit of, or they were able to, you know, match them pound for pound at times. And then they played enemies and obviously beat them. But, you know, like Kevin Murphy's been super impressive. If they could just like, let me just say this, if they could have kept it all together and kept triplets from going on a 16-0 run to end the first half, there's a chance that triplets could have walked away from the weekend 0-2, because that's how on fire Kevin Murphy was. Hit 2 4-pointers, hit really 3, but one counts as a free throw 4-pointer. But 29 points for him. And then, you know, enemies, they took care of business there. What do we, is Three-Headed Monsters the team that might be on the outside looking in, or do you still have do you have faith in them?
I do have, I think you can't not have faith in them because, you know, just
never missed the
who they
playoffs.
are. They've never missed the playoffs before. And I do want that streak to continue. I think Rashard Lewis is really coming into his own. He really seems to be like taking over in some areas. As like the past, it's kind of been like the Kevin Murphy show, but Rashard Lewis is really trying to step up. Reggie Evans won Player of the Week, obviously. So that's, you know,
Offensively, his game looks better each year.
Yeah, I know, which is crazy.
What is happening?
Say.
Not the Reggie Evans we knew.
I'll never forget for at Barclays Center for the 2019 press conference, and it was Three-Headed Monsters versus Trilogy, and Trilogy beat Three-Headed Monsters, but they were talking about, they're like, well, how do you guard Reggie Evans? And Kenyon Martin was like, we want to let Reggie Evans score because he's not a scorer. So if Reggie Evans is the one scoring, it's fine. And I remember sitting there and being like, listen, like, I get your Kenyon, like, you know what I mean? Like, you know more about basketball than I'll ever know in my life. But like, I just flat out disagree with that.
Yeah.
I feel like Reggie Evans has been a pretty offensive weapon his entire Big 3 tenure.
I think so too. He's put up multiple 20-point games, probably more than he has in his whole NBA career. In the Big 3. I mean, to be real.
It's just the rebounding that just sets him apart and
kills you.
For Three-Headed Monsters, I hope not. You know, that's going to be one that stings, but I can never count out a team that has Mahmoud, Reggie, and Rashard, because at the end of the day, they've never missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they are now.
You know what I love too is that over the past 3 weeks, we've had Scal, Coutinho, and Steven Jackson on the broadcasting team. And every time that one of them are talking about a three-headed monsters game, they always talk about how difficult it is to contain Reggie Evans and just how much he means to a team, with his effort, with his rebounding, and apparently now offensively, because, another 2014 game and he won player of the week, which is pretty wild. I thought one of the Killer Threes guys would have won it, but Reggie Evans takes home the player of the week. Three-headed monster sits at 4-2. I think where this race gets really interesting is where we look at the 7-8 spot and we see Power and Ball Hogs, two teams that went 1-1. For Power, they're still dealing with the injury woes. Unfortunately, like Coutinho came back for week 5 and then got hurt in week 6. On the plus side, they did get Big Baby back, and it was good to see Glenn Davis back out there. Bullet,
he's electric.
He really
Glenn
is.
Davis is electric.
A fun guy. He makes the Big3 so much fun. And then, Dusan Bullet, I think that as a facilitator and distributor, already one of the best in the league, but he's really coming into his own as kind of being the guy to run the offense through. And then Ball Hogs is, 1-1. We said they had to be 1-1 to stay in the race. Unfortunately, we didn't think all these teams would be 4-2.
Yeah, we expected a couple 0-2s.
But they are still in 7th place. They still do have a plus point differential. If you had to make a decision today on which 3-3 team would make the playoffs, I think I know what you're going to say, but who would you think?
Like, who has a better shot between the two?
Like, not necessarily a better shot, but who do you think would make it out of the two teams?
I would say Ball Hogs.
Ooh, I didn't think you were going to say that. I thought you were going to be like, oh no, it's Nancy Lieberman and Power.
I think, again, we haven't seen Power fully healthy. And, you add Royce to a team with Coutinho and Glenn Davis and Bullet and, Darnell Jackson, who's been great for them. I just don't know what, I don't know who's stopping that team, but we haven't seen that team yet. And Ball Hogs, to me, Ball Hogs had a rough schedule. They really have. Like, they've played really like all the top teams.
Think about it. They beat Trilogy on Thursday, 50-43, and then they get Tri-State and lose 50-47 in a really, really tight one that I thought they were going to get away with. But Tri-State
Power, to me, like, Power looked good. Doosan looked good, but Power almost blew that lead to Tri-State. And then you're like, oh, like, this doesn't look right. Like, this is like they're playing sloppy. Like, you don't really see this from them.
Yeah, they won 50-47 against Tri-State.
And then that Aliens loss. I don't really have a lot of faith in a team that lost to Aliens. And I get you were missing Royce White, but that was it. You're just missing Royce White. If you're a team that belongs in the playoffs, you have no business losing.
Well, and Coutinho Coutinho did get hurt in that game, and he's still dealing with the leg injury. It seems like he can't shake it off.
I get it. And Bullet's new, and Darnell Jackson's new.
So I will say too, like, a lot of the time I feel like Doosan was making great passes early on in that game.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, the Power Aliens game was really hard to watch. It was a lot of bricks.
It was hard to watch.
Darnell Jackson had a tough time catching the ball early in that game. And I think Doosan was also trying to force some tough passes to not only Jackson, but Big Baby. But I mean, maybe this is more of a credit to Aliens than it is Power, but either way, I think Power dropped the ball in a crucial time to go 2-0 on the weekend. Now sitting at 3-3, it's tough. I mean, they're a team that's never missed the playoffs either, so you don't want to count out anything that Power does or any team run by Nancy Lieberman. But I mean, like you said, they just can't get that. They can't figure out, or they can't get that team healthy. Really, is what it is. And I would have to say Power still, but man, Leandro Barbosa has played
I can
almost
respect
like
that. I can respect that. I just feel like Ball Hogs are like, you know who Ball Hogs are, right? Like, Ball Hogs to me is a team that you go 2-0, you play well, you turn it on. I think Ball Hogs would really benefit a lot from a 6-man in that squad, or someone other than Scalabrini, who really doesn't play but takes up that captain spot.
I mean, the Aliens game is tough. You look at the stats.
That Alien game
when they played tough. Power.
That's a tough pill to swallow.
It really is. But
And
look
I
at,
don't want to reward them after that by being like, yeah, they can still make the playoffs.
look
they're
at
in
this
trouble.
though. Look
They're
at
in
this. Look at
trouble.
this from a production standpoint from Aliens in general. Andre Owens, 14 points. I mean, let me put it in a better fashion to make you realize how how much of an outlier this could be. You don't have
Okay.
Katina Mobley. And then Brandon Rush was your fourth leading scorer in that game with 10 points. Jason Maxiell put up 12. Odin had a really good game offensively and defensively.
Odin
12 points,
great.
8 rebounds. And Andre Owens nails his second 4-pointer of the weekend to win it off balance.
In Tucson's face.
In Tucson's face, 14 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists for Andre Owens. So, I mean, give a little bit of credit to Aliens there, but yes, it is hard to like reward a team that lost to a team that was 1-4 up to this point. So.
I will say this though, if you're the big three, a little off topic, but if you're the big three and you do decide that you want to expand this offseason, first guy I'm going to and offering one of those teams to is Tucson.
Ooh, I like that.
He's been fantastic for the league. Obviously there's a lot of responsibilities that go into being a captain, but I would just say it's yours. Because I think
his whole 3-on-3 team over from FIBA.
I mean,
like,
why not?
Not any of you guys.
Why not?
That'd be interesting to see if it works against,
why? Absolutely. Why the hell not?
Little Serbian basketball and Big 3 merger.
We've seen him. He loves the Big 3.
Yeah.
He's
looked
like
better and better.
He's looked better and better. Like you just said, he's one of the best players in this league. That's evident. You know what I mean? We all knew what he was going to be. It would have been shocking if he wasn't. But you just saw these last 2 games. He is the equivalent of, he's a top 10 player in this league.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like he really has like come on strong. Like imagine if he's not playing in the Olympics beforehand or.
That's what I mean.
Jet lag.
So that to me is somebody. Yeah. That's somebody you want to lock up.
Good way to look at it. Also, I'm giving Andre Owens a team back. Because first off, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened where Greg Oden took the spot and they drafted back, but the man has come to play. He leads the team in scoring. He just drilled 2 game-winning 4-pointers, which I don't know if anyone's ever done that back-to-back.
Definitely not.
It's a big reason why Aliens even has 2 wins in their win comp. Like, I'm like, Andre, I'm sorry. Here's another team. Here's another expansion team. Like, we apologize. Because the man's done good things for Aliens. Like, Aliens should probably be sitting a little bit further down. And well, I mean, they do have 3 expansion teams towards the bottom. But at least they're the best one outside of triplets.
Without a doubt. And they have been.
So I'm at least giving them a team back. Let's talk about Aliens a little bit. 2-4. Three's Company also 2-4. Each team, or Aliens went 2-0, excuse me, and Three's Company went 1-1, albeit that 1 win was against Bivouac. And like we've been kind of calling them at this point, the replacements.
Yeah.
Aliens won 50-45 over Power, and then won 50-42 over Enemies. Three's Company won 50-44 over Bivouac, and then, like I said earlier, lost 50-38 to Ghost Ballers. I think Aliens coming on strong. They've won 2 in a row. Three's Company 1-1, but still severely missing Jeremy Pargo, I think, in that offensive scoring punch. They got 22 points from Drew Gooden, but again, against a Bivouac team with a lot of new faces, still trying to figure out not only the league, but their team.
Right.
I mean,
hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like that every week. Like, who's the only? There is no constant on that team. Reggie Theus is their only constant on that team. Yeah. He just shows up the coach every week. He's like, which 4 or 5 do I have this week?
Yeah.
It is cool to see 2 tryout guys, and I guess we're not talking about Bivouac yet, but it was cool to see 2 tryout guys for Bivouac.
We can knock Bivouac out of the park. It's simple.
Let's just kind of group the 4. We'll add Enemies in there too. 1-5, 0-6 for Bivouac. Enemies and Bivouac at this point are
eliminated.
But the 2-4 teams technically still in the race. Is it too little, too late? Do you think that you should keep an eye on them? I mean,
while they're not mathematically eliminated, I guess keep an eye on them.
Should we go ahead and count them out is what I'm saying. Should we go ahead and cross them off the list? Yes. Not even. Okay.
But I will say this though. I think they're dangerous enough though, where they could play spoiler. I think Aliens already has. Aliens, in my opinion, has messed this whole thing up.
They might have crushed Power's chances.
I really think that they might have, because there's just, you look at all the teams in front of Power who have to lose out.
Yeah, I'm very interested about the schedule now because imagine if a lot of 4-2 teams are playing each other and then Aliens. I mean, like Aliens, have they even? I mean, they played Enemies.
Well, we
They
know
played
Ghost
Bivouac
Ballers
yet.
has to play triplets.
Yeah,
We know
So-
that game's coming.
I'm just looking at it like this way from perspective of like if I'm on Aliens and I'm trying to give myself a little bit of hope sitting at 2-4 after 2
You
weeks.
have hope. You absolutely have hope.
Well, duh, you do as a team,
But your
like,
destiny isn't in your own hands.
fair enough.
That's the only
Fair
thing.
enough.
As
That's a
opposed to everyone else in front of you who is.
Three's
So-
Company, if you get partnered that, it's a huge spoiler team.
Yes, a huge spoiler team. That's a trap game in the industry. They call that a trap game. Anybody playing Three's Company with Pargo back, hopefully, that's a trap game.
You're gonna hate me for saying this, but for some reason, I still look at do we look at Enemies as a potential spoiler team as well? It's sitting at 1-5.
No.
Oh,
Elijah
2
Stewart's in Germany.
Yeah,
You
well,
said that. Elijah Stewart's, I don't know. Is Elijah Stewart done? He's in Germany.
I mean, it might be at the point where they're like, "Hey, your team's eliminated." He's like, well, "I gotta go make money playing somewhere else. This team's not gonna get any wins." We did hear Frank say that there were incentives to win. I don't. What if
Yeah.
it's kind of at the point where they're just like Elijah Stewart's like, "Man, I gotta go for the
Well,
fall."
I'm sure just like anything else, he's looking, he's like, can I collect 2 more game checks? Or do I take this opportunity to start a full season long contract?
Yeah, maybe
So
so.
you take that and nobody can blame, if that's what it is, nobody blames him for that.
It's been a tough year
I
for
wouldn't,
Enemies.
I wouldn't blame him for that if he was on Three's Headed Monsters.
Well, that's true. I wouldn't
You know
either.
what I mean? I would say you got to go take care of you. You know what I mean? And nobody else in their right mind would say that. It would suck. You'd be like,
Yeah.
damn, but come on. You know what I mean?
One thing I wish we would have saw from Enemies a little bit more that we saw in their game against 3-headed monsters is when they went with Perry Jones, Isaiah Austin, and Jordan Hill, like the big lineup.
Mm.
Like they played pretty well. Like they were behind by a lot. 3-headed monsters early in the half. I think it was like 27-13. I mean, I can check for accuracy reasons, but I felt like once they had that lineup, they caught up and they took the lead at a point. And I was like, oh, okay, this lineup together looks pretty good. Like they should have been doing more of this when it was earlier in the season. But yeah, that's a tough way to go out because as for Gil, just feels like Enemies is just not a successful franchise up to this point. Like they just can't figure out what this team needs or who to construct the team around. Your only constant is Perry Jones, who's like, man, I feel like I have a good team every year, and we aren't. We're at the bottom half.
What's crazy is I can't name a single person that saw this coming. Can you? Can you name a single person, Anthony, that saw this coming from the jump?
Let's see.
Not just this season, but last season as well.
Let's see. Was it the guy
And
on
was
Twitter?
maybe somebody who was
Guy on-
desecrated and called a hater. And
Was it the guy that was hitting me up on Instagram or?
I know there was someone hitting you up on Instagram saying that they don't like me because of my opinions.
Well, that is true. Okay, yes. We'll if you haven't figured it out, yes, Will, you are correct for a second year in a row that Enemies is good. At this point, I'm just doubling down. I'm going to triple down, quadruple down. One of these years, one of these games, I will get it right. But
I
mean,
also said too, oh my God, remember my hot take? I said Ball Hogs will be in the playoff race all season.
you said they would have at least a 4-4 record.
Yeah. And here they are 3-3.
You said
That's
Enemies-
crazy.
Yeah. Honestly, and you went 6 for 6 on Thursday. So
I
honestly,
went
at
6
this
for
point,
6 on Thursday, then 1 for 6. I think the next day.
go ahead and crown you here.
I know what I'm
You've
talking
had
about.
a fantastic season. Yeah, you know your shit. So
I know what I'm
people better
talking
get on
about.
it. Know your shit.
It's so funny because like you come to these episodes prepared and you're like,
Wow.
you're
You're coming at me like that?
No. I know. I'm saying you know your shit too. And I come to you for things. Like I'll be like, hey, who, I asked in this episode, who did Killer Threes play? You know what I mean? Like I can't
Yeah.
tell you that. But you want me to pick who's gonna win? Yeah, absolutely. Like I got that. But
Did I watch
don't
these
ask-
games? I watched the most recaps. I probably give the Big 3 YouTube the most views out of anybody. But yeah, I can't pick a team to win to save my life. Been a tough year. And honestly, Saturday was a tough year. There was a ton of upsets. I thought I'd pick one.
Saturday was a wash.
And
take
I
my
try to pick
mulligans
one
out of
upset and I pick enemies again. Like, dude, they
that is a toxic relationship here.
very toxic. Oh God, sickening.
Are enemies the Jets of the Big Three?
Wow, gosh, every team I like just turns to mush. Every team that I'm rooting for, I think I know what I'm talking about, just turns to absolute dog shit. So yes, they are the Jets, the team that you want to be good. It's like this. Okay. My dad has a good friend that's a Jets fan, and every year, through, even before my lifetime, it'd be like, oh, we got Keyshawn Johnson, or we draft, we
Or LT, like Damian
drafted
Tomlinson.
Chad
Yeah.
Pennington, or we got Bill Belichick as coach. My dad's always like, we'll see. Then at the end of the year, they're like in the top 10 for draft picks, and there's another reason. It just feels like we're always finding reasons on why they'll be good, but they're just never good,
Yeah.
So maybe so, good comparison. Let's talk about the last team, Bivouac, who unfortunately is another team that went 0-2 and now sits at 0-6 in the seasons. I don't know if I'm ready to call them the ball hogs of the Big Three just yet, because it's just one season and it has been tough.
As opposed to the ball hogs, who are actually doing very good this season.
Right. It's been a tough year for them. They added Bobby Brown, who looked pretty good in the Big Three, added Tony Criswell, who was a trial guy, as we mentioned earlier, looked really good in his debut, putting up 19 points, 15 rebounds. But their game against Three's Company, this was on Saturday was a kind of tough one to watch because it didn't really have a lot of implications. I mean, the cool part about Bivouac is they do have a couple tryout guys, and we do get to see a couple new faces to the league. Who do you like that you feel like maybe should have or could have been drafted? Maybe let's start with this. Should have been drafted.
How would you fix Bivouac?
No. That's not what I'm saying. You don't fix Bivouac. They've just had a tough season and a lot of bad luck with some of the injuries and sicknesses they're facing. But which guy on Bivouac currently do you feel like should have been drafted to another team that was picked up by Bivouac? Or which player, I said which team, which player, and which player do you feel like has a real shot to be drafted next year as a potential piece to make a team better? Like who do you like on Bivouac that's on their team right now? I know it's kind of
I see what you're
mixed
saying.
bag.
I see what you're saying. I mean,
like who's making a case for themselves for next year at this point? That's what you kind of look at.
I think Criswell's played great. And
one game under his belt, 19-15.
Yeah, Criswell.
I like Bobby Brown.
Alonzo Gee's been good. They've been fun to watch with the replacements. Unfortunately, it kind of worst case scenario, it went from a team that was heavily underachieving, where you were almost like, come on, I don't even want to watch this, what are you guys doing? There's so much talent on this team. What are you guys doing? And then unfortunately, everyone got hurt.
Dude, it feels like
so now it's a different kind of suck. You know what I mean? It's not the suck that pisses you off. It's just a suck you're like, oh,
Alex, that one's way worse too, by the way, when someone's like, kind of feels bad for you.
Yeah, that's what it is. I went from being like, what the hell, Bivouac, to Bivouac.
This is the funniest part, or not the funniest part, but I guess the saddening part is we saw Jermaine Taylor get a shot. The next week he's out. Saw Quincy Miller get a couple shots, had a great game. He's out somewhere. Saw Alonzo G finally have his best games. He doesn't play this week. It's every time they build off something,
I know.
it just instantly
it's brutal.
turns around.
It's like that. It's every team's like, oh, this is our once in a lifetime team. That goes the opposite way. It's a once in a lifetime, terrible bad luck team.
Yeah, if one word to describe Bivouac, if we're going to stay on that trend, which we failed to do throughout the episode.
Oh yeah, we didn't do that once.
We were going to describe each team in one word, but that didn't happen except for one team. But for Bivouac, it's easy. It's just the replacements. You fill in the gaps where you can, and hopefully some of these guys make a name for themselves for the upcoming years. I mean, we see what Big Three Big Three vets come in and do. So hopefully, in the future, that's what Bivouac can do. But I like to see all the tryout guys get an opportunity, because really for guys like Tony Criswell and Corey Jefferson and Devin Sweetney, who hasn't made his debut yet, for guys like that, they really are blazing a path for others who want to be professionals and now have an opportunity to do so if they have a good tryout and ultimately a good combine and get drafted.
Agreed. Yeah, now it's been proven. If you go out and you combine, you might not necessarily get drafted, but they're obviously very seriously considering that, because they kept these guys' names written down. And now these guys are getting opportunities.
Yeah, no doubt. So 2 more weeks within the regular season coming up. We don't exactly know the schedule yet. I think the players do, but maybe the website does not. So we look at week 7 and week 8, 2 more games. We talked a little bit about MVP races. Let me ask you this question. I know that we talked about it a little bit last week, but at this point, I feel like it's been 2 weeks essentially, even though it's been 1. I think things have changed up a little bit. Give me your top 3 MVPs and give me your four Bahamas teams, like 4 teams that you think are going to make the playoffs.
Got it. Okay, that's a fair question to ask at this point. I would say my 4 Bahamas teams are probably, I'm going to say Triplets, Trilogy, Killer Threes, Ghost Ballers.
Okay. So essentially the current standings except Ghost Ballers for Tri-State. Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah.
For my MVPs.
Yeah, give me your MVP race. And I'll give you
I'm going to say Joe Johnson, number 1. I'm going to say Mike Taylor, number 2. And then gaining very quick momentum is Dante Green at number 3.
Okay. So I have the same 3, Triplets, Trilogy, Killer Threes as my 3 Bahamas team, or 3 of my 4 Bahamas teams. The 4th one's tough for me because I really do feel like I want to say Ghost Ballers, but now I don't know how bad the injury is to Mike Taylor. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that bad, but you don't know how it affects teams long term. Tri-State, you like the small ball lineup. How effective is it on every team? I feel like they're maybe a matchup nightmare for some and others not. And then you have 3-headed monsters who make the playoffs every year. You got a couple 3-and-3 teams in there. So tough. I'll give you my MVP race. It's definitely Joe Johnson. I'm going to say Leandro Barbosa. I'm going to say Dante Green, just because I feel like Dante Green made headway and Mike Taylor lost a couple points just for more of a team effort on Thursday and then missing the game. That 4th team, tough. I think I'm going to say 3-headed monsters just because they somehow seem to make it in every year.
Yeah.
That's just me kind of taking a wild guess at this point, though.
I think I'll have a better understanding of that once I see the schedule.
Yes, I think so too. That would give me
because Ghost Balls, in
right
my
indication.
opinion, Ghost Balls haven't played Triplets, haven't played Power. I think
that's why
if they play those 2 teams to end the season, I don't know if I have them number 4.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. You look at the teams who have already went through the gauntlet for,
which is Trilogy and Killer Threes.
Trilogy, Killer. I think 3-headed monsters has already played a ton of tough teams.
Yeah.
They played Triplets already. They already played Trilogy. They haven't played Killer Threes, but
one of these teams is going to end up playing Aliens, Enemies, Bivouac.
Yeah, at this point, it's
company.
like these teams
and that's the team that I feel like is going to be like,
maybe that's the way to look at it. Like, who hasn't played the worst teams yet? All right, guys, that's going to do it for this week's episode. I know it's kind of a lot of information thrown at you and 2 games packed into 1 episode, but hopefully we were able to detail it enough and give you a little bit of indication of where the teams stand and how they look currently. We appreciate everybody who tunes in week in and week out, whether it's on your preferred podcast platform, you're watching the show, or you're tuning in on Dash Radio or the Nothing But Net channel. We appreciate you guys as always. We'll be back for another recap in week 7, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yes, sir.